I think we're done. Wow, no proc, eh? Wow, that's interesting. There we go. Here we go. The moment of truth, please. Woo! Yes. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today, of course, you can already tell by the intro that we are talking about Tier 3 Sharon Rogers. I got lucky, and then I got busy spending close to 20 million gold, spending a lot of Dimension Dust, Titan Component Packs, CCF, Blast, Titan Books, and Black Antimatter to get this baby to a rocking rank 103. And although I haven't been able to test her out in World Boss Ultimate, because of course I got her today, I was able to test her out in Giant Boss Raid, which I will be showing you a clip of shortly. And all I can say is, despite or even with all of the hype already surrounding the character, I was still surprised at how insane the damage was. And for those of you that are curious, I'm just under 40,000. I was going to say 400. Sometimes it feels like 400. Just under 40,000 physical attack, in the range of 15,000 energy and physical defense, and then just under 40,000 HP. So very high stats for a tier 3 character. I think she's right under the boost that Thor gets, and Thor is one of the highest boosts in the game next to Deadpool and I believe Captain America. So she's in pretty high standing as far as that goes. Definitely puts Iron Man to shame. Probably also puts Magneto to shame, although he is a villain. But it's a pretty interesting situation to consider Sharon Rogers tier 3 amongst all the other tier 3s. And so I do want to have a bit of a discussion in terms of where I think her place lies. But in terms of her overall damage output, especially for PvE content, and I was able to boost her enhancement up. I did most of the building of the character after the Giant Boss Raid clip, which, you know what, I'll just show it to you now because it's so insane. Can Kingpin be my favorite? Oh snap, it is alive. Get low when the whistle blow. Ah! It disappeared. It disappeared. I've never seen that before. Pog you. Oh my god. I timed that perfectly. Is it over? Oh my god. What the fuck was that? I deleted him at the beginning. Yeah. It's I don't even know what to say. It was completely ridiculous. But to that end, I actually did a lot of the building beyond the Giant Boss Raid, as far as building up her enhancement and tweaking some of her and enhancing some of her Uru. So I do imagine that she could do an even better job of that, slightly better. And of course, if I enhanced her with, a better leadership, for example, instead of Wasp, I do risk getting debuffed, but we can definitely push those numbers up, and we could, believe it or not, actually clear it even faster. But yeah, I don't know another character in the game that can clear Giant Boss, that can kill Master Mold from 80 bars in 2 sixth skills, basically 2 ults, and he's done. It takes Deadpool somewhere north of 6 ults, possibly 10 ults, depending on the team you have. It probably takes Captain America at least that many, and he has other difficulties. So I think in terms of damage related to the difficulty of charging up the tier 3 skill, Sharon Rogers definitely has the most powerful tier 3 skill in the game. The #1 tier 3 skill in terms of the amount of damage, the number of hits, the AoE, and the ease with which her skill gets fired off. You have to also consider the amount of time that it takes to trigger the tier 3 skill. The tier 3 skill has some lingering effects with the buffs that apply to the allies, the 100% immunity and the 50% decreased damage. Those buffs appear on a larger bubble, and those buffs will actually linger for about 5 or 6 seconds. Even though it says 1 second, it keeps refreshing, and it's indicated visually by that much larger bubble that covers basically the entire arena. But in terms of actually getting off her damage, she has a very fast tier 3 skill. It's definitely faster than Captain America's. It's definitely faster, probably faster than Deadpool's. She has one of the fastest tier 3 skills in terms of how long the animation takes to go through its entire, basically hit, from the first hit to the last hit. In terms of the actual cost of the character, for those of you guys that are curious, of course there is some RNG to the matter. I did reduce a lot of the RNG when leveling her up from level 60 to level 70 by just going to 100% on the potentials, because I just didn't want to risk it. So I definitely spent a little bit more materials, and I saved some gold. I also just saved the headache of getting unlucky. And then I did her gears relatively decent. I think my average roll per gear was probably around 15 or 16 from 20 to 25. I think the highest I had was about 30, but I only had above 25 once or twice. So in total, I started off with 6,434 Dimension Dust, 5,598 Titan component packs, and 73 million, just under 73,300,000 gold, and 21,837 BAM. At the end, and you can see the math there, I ended up with 4,850 Dimension Dust, 4,014 Titan component packs, and 69,246 million gold, and 18,600 BAM. So it is a pretty expensive run overall, but not so bad compared to some other characters. Spider-Man actually cost me a lot more just to rank up his gears to 25, so there's obviously a degree of RNG involved in getting the character's gears from 20 to 25, which is disappointing. But I do wish you guys luck in your upgrades for Sharon Rogers if you do want to go for her. But now I want to do a little bit of the discussion on actually what I think is the value of Sharon Rogers tier 3, because I showed you guys the clip at tier 2 clearing the stage 45 Corvus. My speculation is she could probably push to 55 or 60 Corvus, and probably at least 50 in Cull Obsidian, and then maybe 30 or plus in Thanos, and I don't know where with Proxima. And you've of course seen the insane Giant Boss raid. But as far as blast characters go, we already have Cable, so you have to consider the fact that you don't need Sharon Rogers at all for ABX, and this is something that a lot of people bring up. You know, we're already hitting 2 million with Cable, and it's capped, and Cable goes way over the cap already. He gets, 4 million, sometimes 5 million, whatever, however much he gets, he goes over the cap. And then people are saying, oh, Sharon Rogers goes over the cap too. Is she going to override Cable? It doesn't really matter. If the character scores 2,100,000 or they score 10 million, it doesn't make a difference as long as the cap is still 2 million. So I do want to point that out. However, because of the fact that she has no dedicated blast day, there is no blast female day, despite there being a speed female, a villain female, a universal hero female, combat female. There's no blast female. So I don't know whether to be happy or sad about that. I guess Netmarble didn't want people to feel pressured to build Sharon Rogers tier 3, which is kind of nice. But on the other hand, you do have to consider the efficiency of it. Now, she is going to be extremely powerful for World Boss Ultimate and Giant Boss Raid. That's pretty easy to illustrate and to anticipate. However, I do not see her value being very high in PvP. I did a few PvP tests with her, both playing manually and playing on autoplay, and while I don't have the ideal PvP build, I do have 8 or 7 5 and 6 star HP Urus, which is almost the maximum amount, so she is rocking a pretty respectable HP amount. And combined with her 40% damage reduction from Expert Lancer, stacking with her uniform passive, her mythic uniform, which I've also rolled with all defense. I don't see her being too much more well built for PvP. I think the only big difference I could make is to change her CTP of energy for a CTP of destruction. Two of the things that make her quite bad for PvP are, one, she has a lack of iframes. She really only has one reliable iframe, which is Shock and Awe. Her 4th skill iframe just takes too long to trigger because it has a wind up, and other characters can just interrupt her very easily with their own iframes, and then when it becomes an iframe duel, she's going to lose the majority of the time. Secondly, she doesn't have any Ignore Dodge, and Ignore Dodge is an increasingly valuable asset, especially to take characters like Tier 3 Spider-Man and level 70 Tier 2 Quicksilver. And if you can't kill those characters consistently, especially as a blast type when you're at a type disadvantage against speeds, it becomes really apparent how the character struggles. A third thing that I didn't even think of mentioning, but it also makes a lot of sense, she lost her penetration of super armor. She doesn't have any penetration on any of her skills natively unless she triggers her tier 2 skill, or sorry, tier 3 skill. Her tier 3 skill does give her an 80% chance to penetrate barrier, shield, immune, and invincible for 10 seconds, which applies to all of her skills, but that doesn't include super armor. So the fact that she can't penetrate super armor does put her at an additional disadvantage, and while she does have her own super armor with fortification, she's still going to need guard break immunity to avoid getting super armor penetrated by those other characters, and then she can't even do that back to them. So then in a weird way, even if she was to be dominant in PvP, it would open up other teams to not even have to use guard break immunity on their characters' gears, which I don't think I'm going to see. Now, there is still the outside chance that she's going to be very powerful for Alliance Tournament and Alliance Conquest because of her tier 3 skill, Legendary Defender. If she can survive long enough to cast this skill, it's either going to kill everything on the screen that's not on your team, or it's going to provide your team with such a heavy defense bonus, the decrease all damage received by 50%, and the 100% chance to be immune. That's such a crazy bonus to have for like 5 or 6 seconds that basically pushes the advantage so far in your team's favor, because you essentially have 5 seconds of free damage with no repercussions, because 50% damage reduction is huge. And a lot of other characters being played in Alliance Tournament like Strife and Thanos, they already have damage reduction stacked natively, so that's going to multiply with their own and basically make them so they're taking just hundreds of points of damage, and they're taking very little damage. However, to counter Sharon Rogers is there's just too many powerful speed types right now in a lot of PvP game modes. Deadpool is probably the most punishing one, with long iframes, all defense down, 6th skill that does insane damage and penetrates everything, and the fact that he heals means that he can make up for a lot of your mistakes. Secondly, we've already covered Quicksilver, but the 50% guaranteed dodge or 45% guaranteed dodge, coupled with his penetration on all of his skills, coupled with his long iframes, makes him a really frustrating fight one-on-one or possibly 3 versus 3 for Sharon Rogers. So I don't see Sharon Rogers having as much of an impact, despite the possibility. I don't see her having as much of an impact on her tier 3 skill, besides her tier 3 skill for PvP. But that still means that she's one of the top 5 or top 3 world boss ultimate characters, and possibly, for other kind of PvE type game modes. So where exactly does that put Sharon Rogers? Because I think a lot of people are still going to be asking the question after this video, Cynicalex, should I tier 3 Sharon Rogers? Well, I don't know. I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to feel as though you're being left out or that you're missing out on something? I think a lot of players initially tier 3 Captain America because, yeah, I mean, he was the only tier 3, but also because everyone else was tier 3 in Captain America, and perhaps you don't use Captain America as much as you used to because you're not really big on ABX, for example, even though that is the primary reason to tier 3 him nowadays. People might also feel the same way about someone like Iron Man or Spider-Man because they were the next tier 3s, and so on and so forth. And I think Sharon Rogers is the latest kind of character to create that situation. She's the first female tier 3, and she's a very flashy tier 3. I mean, that skill looks so cool. It's got, reminds you of Dragon Ball Z. It's got that nostalgia with the big blast. And she's just a really cool character, and she's beloved because she's an original character, and she's pretty much universally owned by everyone in the game because she's a free-to-play character and because she's so highly recommended as a hero's journey character. So I think a lot of players are just going to say, well, you know what? I built Sharon Rogers anyways. I mythicked her uniform. I gave her my CTPs. I gave her all my love. Might as well go that extra mile and tier 3 her. So I do want to say that while I understand that, and I do think that she won't disappoint you from a PvE point of view at her tier 3, she doesn't really have an outstanding place to dominate as much as some of these other characters. You know, Cap dominates Combat Hero Day, and he also has the flexibility to dominate Combat Female Hero Day, and he was the first tier 3, and he's also the only tier 3 with insane stats. He's got the highest tier 3 stats of any character. He's also got the worst tier 3 skill in terms of how frustrating it is to use. Deadpool dominates World Boss Ultimate. He's also very flexibly good for PvP because of his heals, and you know, he's Deadpool, so he's just super popular, and he doesn't even have a uniform, so he has so much potential left, and you're going to build him up anyways because of the epic quest. Thor is a really popular tier 3 because he's a universal type, because everyone loves Thor, and he just looks cool. It looks like a badass, and you want to imagine that you're killing Thanos. So a lot of these, we can talk about Magneto, how he's a blast villain, and he's useful for ABX. So those tier 3s I'm highlighting because they have a very clearly defined role in the game, and they have a very clearly defined value tied to a specific game mode. Sharon Rogers doesn't really have that. Is she going to be better than Deadpool for World Boss Ultimate? Possibly, probably. Is she going to be better than Scarlet Witch for World Boss Ultimate? Again, possibly, probably, depending on how much you value the mind control for her as a striker. But outside of World Boss Ultimate, outside of, you know, a 1 minute or a 1 minute 30-second giant boss raid clear, I don't know how much impact Sharon Rogers is going to have. I do hope to see in the future some game modes that specifically highlight and are specifically made for tier 3 characters only. I know that some people who are newer to the game might feel like Giant Boss Raid is for tier 3 characters because of how difficult it seems, but honestly it's not. You can definitely get by with tier 2 characters, and having a place specifically for tier 3s so that we can get a bit of a better evaluation of them against each other exclusively would be really nice, and it would definitely reward players for tier 3ing multiple characters rather than just tier 3ing them for existing game modes to dominate a little bit more. You know, rather than scoring 4 million with Cable, I can score 4.2 million with Sharon Rogers. Dab, blaze it. You know what I mean? So that is my hope for the future, and being able to see these characters playing against one another exclusively in order to create a kind of bar or a bell curve to see where they land would be amazing. But in the meantime, we can say with confidence that she's a badass and she hits like a truck full of trucks, and you won't be disappointed with the damage. So let me know what you guys think of tier 3 Sharon Rogers. If you can't wait for more Sharon Rogers tier 3 content, please hit me up on Twitch tonight, because we're going to be going through all the world bosses, seeing how far she can go, resetting, and just doing tons of testing with her. You don't want to miss that. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.